So, in software, where you're looking and trying to figure out why something doesn't work the way you expect it to work, oftentimes, meaning a bug, you try to find something that is incongruent with reality. Now, reality in this case is the way that you expect something to operate versus the way it's actually operating, and you try to figure out why. The catch here is you start off with the assumption that you are right and that this should operate in a particular way. But at some point, you do need to come to a conclusion, maybe, that even you could be wrong. Meaning, if you're right, then this isn't operating the way it should, and there's something wrong here. If you are wrong, meaning your perspective of the world is wrong, then this is operating right, and your perspective of it is just off. I'm beginning to think that way about Sanders. Meaning, if I was pursuing an event or an election, to me, this stuff boils down to gamesmanship. And when in the context of a game, you try to rack up wins in order to win the game. But that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody is operating in the same way. I mean, after all, when Sanders ran in 2016, he didn't think he could win. He was just running to push the candidate to the left. Gabbard, in this race, I would argue, didn't jump in with the notion she was going to win. She went with the notion of pushing anti-war or anti-interventionist wars. Now, don't get me wrong. If either of those got the light, they would run with it. But ultimately, the original intention wasn't necessarily to win. Maybe my perspective of Sanders was wrong. Not so much my observations. My observations were right. But maybe the way I was thinking about it is not the way that I think he's thinking about it. I have an hypothesis on this. People always call things theory. Theory is a little bit far more ingrained in reality. This is more of a hypothesis. And I think this one is more right, however. Let's talk about it. What is the deal with Sanders? And to be clear, this has to do with the way he's running this race in the context of Warren. In the context of Warren, I have a better hypothesis. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support PayPal Patron. I was thinking about this, and I was bugging my wife about it. She was in there trying to work, and I was like, hey, I have a hypothesis on Sanders. It dawned on me as I was thinking about it over the past few days. And then we got into this conversation about us backing Nazis. And yeah, we have weird conversations, so at the very least, she's at the end of weird conversations. More so, it dawning on me that I've been saying it for the past few weeks, but ultimately it didn't settle in from a historical context of Nazis, fascists pushing back the communists or fighting the communists, ultimately losing, and us using the vestiges of these historical weapons, meaning in the Ukraine, using Nazis to go against the vestige of the Soviet Union, meaning Russia, and using that same premise going against leftists in Bolivia. I mean, this is gross politics. Nevertheless, in the context of Bernie Sanders and Warren, Bernie v. Warren, I have a better hypothesis. So over the last month or so, I kept saying, what are you doing, Sanders? I think I even made multiple videos. What are you doing? You're in a contest. And in the context of being in a contest, you have a person who is literally aping you, who finds whatever policy you go with and just ape that policy. Do you realize that Elizabeth Warren has now stolen, when Sanders in his speeches will say, are you willing to fight for somebody that don't look like you? She has literally verbatim stolen that. She has taken it upon herself to ape you, policy-wise, and try to make it as if you two are a one-to-one. Even when asked, is there any difference between you and Sanders? She's like, nope, I'm not going there. Why? Because that's her goal. That's her objective. And Sanders doesn't show the distinctions. There are a litany of them. Her policy on Israel and Palestine, even the money in politics stuff, when she took all of that money, dumped it into her campaign, and then called herself grassroots, when she knew that wasn't true. Even Standing Rock. I mean, you can go down the list in regards to the differences between these two, but she won't bring it up. Even Sanders' ability to talk about foreign policy. not voting for the military budget. And we asked Warren, why did you vote for the military budget? She says, Emma Vigeland. Oh, are you asking, should we cut the military budget? Yes, that budget is corrupt, etc., etc. And Emma never said, well, wait a minute, you voted for a corrupt military budget? Even not supporting Sanders in 2016. And then turning around and backing Clinton. Not being honest that she told Clinton she was going to back her going all the way back to 2013. I guess my point is, as these items come up, he never takes the opportunity to show the distinctions between who he is versus who she is. And for all intents and purposes, allows her to essentially just ape being Sanders. The evolution of Medicare for all that stuff. Sanders may make a minor critique here or there, but never to show the difference and never to pile up wins. This notion of not taking money in the primary, but then taking it in the general. He never at once on a debate stage made the point that, well, Warren here is going to take it in the general. That doesn't really make sense. You should also just take it in the primary. Are you doing this just to be more like me or get it across to the public? I kept saying, what are you doing? And I think I even at one point asked, do you even want to win? I was partially right, partially wrong. What I think. Sanders asked Warren to run in 2016. He decided to take the burden on himself in order to run because he wanted a candidate from the left. I think he earnestly and honestly wants to win. But I also think he thinks to himself, I am an older man. Now, part of this wanting to win is gumption. It's this motivation coming back from being on the edges of society for the past 40 years and then all of a sudden catching the limelight. And he taking the burden on himself, believing, I want this for the country and I want to be able to bring this home. Because at the very least, after being on the outskirts, we can make this country a better country. Meaning taking this almost like a statesman, in this case, in order to be president. In this case, there is a major motivation in him wanting to win this race. So I think the answer is, do you even want to win? I think the answer is yes. I think he really does. Reports came out that he did not want Joe Biden to take it. This was almost like years ago when The Hill reported this. He believes he created a space. He wants to bring that to fruition, and he doesn't want Joe Biden stepping into that space. That would be a catastrophe. If you notice on the campaign trail, he is perfectly willing to hit Joe Biden. He is perfectly willing. And he would make those clear distinctions, even on the debate stage. He would hit Joe Biden. He would turn to him and say, Joe, you're a good friend of mine, but, and then bam. He would do it on the Iraq war vote. He would do it on the trading regulations. He will hit Biden. Never Warren. Have you noticed that? Warren apes him this entire race. And the only person that can make the point that you're aping me doesn't bring it up, doesn't say anything about it. And he allows her to just get closer and closer under his wing, again, fooling the American public that doesn't pay quite as much attention to this as we do, that these two people are the same. He has no issue hitting Biden. I would wager to you he would have no issue hitting anybody else in the race either. But he leaves Warren alone. He leaves her alone, conspicuously so. Which again, I asked, does he really want to win? I think the answer is yes, he does want to win. By the same token, just like in 2016, where he asked Warren to run, to some degree, probably because he thinks, I'm an older man, this is a heavy burden in order to lift, however I would take it if it is to get this particular perspective in the limelight and to crush what is now going for the Democratic Party, a corrupt organization. I will take that burden on. In this case, though, Warren ran in this race also. What I strongly suspect is the reason why Sanders is putting these policies out like that and forcing her to ape him. Meaning, if you're going to ape me, ape me. I'm calling myself a socialist. How far are you really going to go, capitalist? And he takes one policy and he states, bam, this is where I'm going to go with this. Ape me. Now, she continues to ape him in all of these policies, being just a shy of where he is. Now, I've kept saying I don't have any belief that Warren is going to believe any of this stuff with the exception of the banking regulations. And from foreign policy, that doesn't even come up. But on domestic policy, she continues to ape him. Policy after policy after policy. Be it environmental, be it Medicare for all, and so forth. And what I strongly suspect is he would be okay with losing to her, providing he can get her all the way out on the left where he can put a knife in her and say, all right, right there on the dartboard. She has just come out for this policy. Very specific. She's put it out herself. This is where she is. It's not exactly where I am, but it's close. And to do this over and over and over with Medicare for all, with environmental regulations, with et cetera, et cetera. The problem is this doesn't touch foreign policy. That's the problem with this. Meaning, in Sanders' mind, he may think to himself, yes, I do want to win this. However, I am nearly 80 years old. I'm tired, even though, yes, I want this, and I'm powered by this. If I lose to her and can get her all the way out to the left on these policies, where I could put a pin in her and force her to be there, then I'm okay with it. That would be an utter catastrophe if that's true. But think about it for the moment. He tried to get her to run in 2016. What's different? The only difference is he is now running. He has a spotlight. But has his perspective changed in any particular way where he thinks the country will be suited if we could pull the country this much to the left and you would pull the country this much to the left? Has his perspective changed on that front? And if it hasn't changed on that front, and he has her in the race, yes, she's in the race to hit him in the knees. He may even know that. But still, he doesn't hit her. My issue here is he's a rational human being. And as a rational human being, you can look and say she's aping me. And if that's true, then why doesn't he say anything? And is it possible he doesn't say anything because his thought is, I can drag her out to the left. I can put a pin in her when she's out there to the left, forcing her to be a certain way on domestic politics. And if I lose with her being that far out to the left, then okay. I'm willing to accept that. The weird part here is this logic runs through the American public also, but in somewhat of a different way. Meaning, when we look at this race, we can see a difference between who Warren is and who Sanders is. A distinct difference. But the American public doesn't look at it that way. Meaning, they don't follow politics as closely. They see one with a vagina, that old guy has a penis. Let's go with the younger one with a vagina. They're close enough. Meaning, even if the public doesn't see them as a one-to-one, the public may say, good enough. She's not exactly him, but good enough. It's very possible that in Sanders' head, he may be looking at this burden in a similar way. I don't want to ding her. I don't want to hurt her for the general, just in case she wins. And if I can get her all the way out here on these various items, that will drag the country to the left. Fair enough. I told my wife, I said, if that's true, that would be a catastrophe. I don't want the close enough aspect of Sanders running. Meaning, if this is right, it still sucks. Like, think about foreign policy stuff. Like, when Sanders comes out and says we need to get out of the Middle East, Warren doesn't think that. I don't think Warren thinks that at all. And when you get to this notion of the Yemen bill, even if you get into this notion of going for these protest marches, Warren does that only now that he's running. Sanders has been doing this his entire life. The Standing Rock stuff, Warren's association with Hillary Clinton behind the scenes, these things are not good things. Her Medicare for All bill. Right now, what you see, though, is a bit of a deviation because Warren has started to deviate from Sanders. The mask has started to come off. This do you want to give her ICE? Warren is looking for the general election. She says no. Sanders says yes. I'm definitely going to give her ICE. If you look for the this resolution that Sanders has in regards to Bolivia, wait, not resolution, but him coming out for South America countries. Warren's not going to do that. She's not going to mention the Middle East at all, South America at all. I guess I'm saying it's possible that if my hypothesis is right, he's not going to ding her on stuff where she is in alignment with him on. The only part that I'm unclear on, that I could be wrong on, is that him going out that far to the left may be the way that he's revealing. Meaning, I guess there's two hypotheses. The first one is he's pulling her out to the left with this notion that I could put a pin on her and it could be just good enough that I can find acceptable to support her if she wins. On the second point is, I'm dragging her out to the left because I know that's what she's doing. Meaning, I know she's aping me, and as opposed to pointing out the fact that you're aping me, I am just going to drag you out to the left where I know you can't go. Essentially, I call myself a socialist. All of this is fair game for me. Is it fair game for you? So maybe those are two hypotheses. God knows, I hope it's not the first. God knows, I hope it's not the first. And just so we're clear, just because and sometimes I have a tendency to talk my way into thoughts. First hypothesis. Sanders can rationalize accepting Warren if he can drag her out to the left and put a pin in her in various political policies. Now, this seems to only account for domestic policy, but if he can do that and he can find it, this is acceptable because I've dragged her this far out and there's no way she can tack back in the general, and I can back her on this if she wins. Now, to me, this is a rationalization in his own mind. I'm an older man. I don't necessarily want to take this burden. I will take this burden as a statesman if nobody else would take this burden. However, I would find it acceptable if she gets out to this point and she can't go back. Horrible hypothesis one. Second one is, it doesn't benefit me to ding her. It doesn't look good optics-wise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag her out to the left, areas where I know that she can't legitimately go. So yes, I want to give her advice. Yes, I want to pull out of Yemen and in Syria. Yes, I want to get rid of all student debt. Yes, I want to do medical debt also. Like, taking her out in ways that she, for the most part, can't legitimately and credibly go. The catch here and the potential problem with this is, she can just lie. Meaning she can say one thing and just tack back in the general. Nobody's going to remember this stuff at all. That's why I think hypothesis A is a little bit problematic. If Warren goes out and says, yes, I want Medicare for all, and I'm not going to increase the amount on the middle class. Well, Sanders knows that's not really truthful. And he does try to make some distinction there without necessarily hitting her directly on that point. The other people in the race just call it dishonest. Or the mental gymnastics, I think is what they call it. That's a deviation. Sanders says he wants to give her advice in his immigration plan. Warren is not going to do that. She already said, no, we need ICE. So in this case, again, a deviation. Sanders, and what was the last policy that he put out? But they were showing, my point is minor deviations are starting to show within the context of the positions itself. Meaning, if it is hypothesis A, where I'm going to drag her into places that I know she can't go, then you may be seeing cracks on this front. But I don't know. I mean, part of my feeling is it's more along with A. And that's horrendous if it's true. Yeah, that would be horrendous. I think Bernie doesn't see her as a threat. B is focused on turnout. Bernie wants this especially after AOC endorsement and heart attack. I think he wants it. Don't misunderstand me. In both of these items, he does want it. And he is willing to accept it, especially from the standpoint of a statesman. You know, I'm going to win this race. I'm going to win this race for America. It's in America's best interest to toe this particular line. It will help this number of people. I think he wants it. By the same token, is it possible that in Sanders' mind, how could he not see her as a threat at this point? This is kind of what I mean. As a rational human being, when you're looking at the polling, you can look at the polling and say, all right, she is clearly a threat. I don't know how you couldn't see her as a threat at this point. I just don't. So, I God honest hope it's not the first one where it's, if I can pull her out far enough, I can be, I can accept this. The second one is problematic to me. See, for me, the reason why I'm thinking in these terms is because, to me, the way I orient myself around the game, which the election is you do things to win. And I believe you can take a leftist philosophy in this case of making these big, expansive, visionary plans. And if you're going against a right-winger, that wins. Hope and Change won, despite the fact he didn't mean it. And so Sanders, in the way he goes about his elections, he can do that. The catch here is you have somebody else who is aping him, meaning that person is pretending to be him. And in pretending to be him with the extra benefit of, I'm a little bit younger than he is and I'm a woman. It should be an easy choice, right? He's older, I'm pretending to be him. And if a public is looking at it and the public can't make a distinction between the two because they don't pay attention to politics, they would say, okay, I picked the younger woman. Now, people who are supportive of Sanders looks at this and say this is a catastrophe because she's not you. She's not you in a host of policies. And not just a host of policies. You have to actually believe her, which I have no idea why anybody would. But again, if you don't entirely pay attention to politics in this way, you would just take what the person is saying as if these two are the same. They're not. So if you're Sanders and you see this as a rational human being, you don't do anything about that, then it seems like you don't want to win. Now, the reason why I say I think he wants to win, and if he's a rational human being that clearly sees what's taking place, what could be another excuse or reason why he doesn't do something about this? Now, if you're in his position, you may say, what am I supposed to do about this? Now, I would say you pile up wins when you get the opportunity. Meaning, you can't call her a liar. That doesn't work. However, when there are situations that arise on the campaign, you take advantage of it. So if she's in the race and she's saying I'm grassroots funded, you bring up, well, she's not grassroots funded. She dumped $11 million from, or $14 million, how much ever the money was, $11 million, from a race where she pulled money from all sources. That's not true what she just said. Sanders never brought that up. This notion of, I'm going to not take it in the primary, but I'm going to totally take all of this money in the general. Again, Sanders doesn't bring this up. He never asks, well, Elizabeth, that doesn't really make sense. I mean, why are you doing it here? I mean, why not just take money in the primary? I mean, it may even help you get up and running even faster. But you're going to take it in junk. That doesn't make sense. Are you doing this just because you want to stand beside me and trick the American public into thinking that we're the same quantity? He doesn't bring that up. My point is he never brought that stuff up in order to rack up wins. And if he never brought that stuff up, I have to ask why. What is his strategy for dealing with the fact that this other woman's strategy is to ape him? And so I'm stuck with this notion of what else could it be from his perspective? It could be he's too moral to hit her, in which case, I don't know if you should be running. And it also could be, well, it doesn't benefit me to hit her, and so I need to find other ways in order to win this race. Which goes to point B. This notion of I am going to bring her out to the left in an area where she just can't be. So yes, I'm going to be for Medicare for all. And then she gets this weird thing when somebody asks her about it and she says, well, I'm not going to increase taxes on the middle class. And people are like, how does that work? Well, that's her drowning in the deep end. Yes, I'm going to say I want to get rid of ICE, especially on issues of immigration, and she can't match that, meaning she's not going to get the Hispanic vote. Like, I guess my point is, his strategy could be to pull her so far out that she just can't go there. In an odd way, her strategy of Elizabeth Warren of being the middle person in this case. I guess my point is, it looks like you have to do something about that. And if maybe I'm seeing it wrong, and maybe he is doing something about that in the case of dragging her out to the left. I could be wrong. But let's see. People are going to disagree with me here. Biden is more of a threat to Bernie's presidency. Bernie is second default candidate. People just saw a powerful woman lose. No, Pop. No. I'm sorry, Pop. If you look at the most recent polling, you would find that Warren has started to become the second person. I shit you not. I'm telling you, it's not Biden, it's Warren. Warren is a threat. But look, Sanders clearly is the better candidate. So don't misunderstand me. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. It's public perception that I'm concerned about. If I was talking to, let's say, a niece who doesn't pay attention to politics, and I ask her, who do you think will be a good candidate? If she likes Sanders, she may say she also likes Warren. She may say those two for her are indistinguishable from one another because she doesn't pay attention to politics. They just hear him say similar things. When Warren takes on Sanders' vernacular, takes on the namesake of Medicare for All and this other stuff, and she's on the debate stage screaming for Medicare for All, even though she doesn't have her own health care plan. They see that as one-to-one. Her polling numbers have gone up. And even though they're somewhat different constituencies, many of the people within that constituency would back Sanders if she wasn't in the race. This is kind of my point. Biden is a threat in the sense that Biden is doing well. But if you think about it, Warren and Sanders together easily beats Biden's numbers, meaning if Warren wasn't in the race, Sanders would be winning this race whole hog. The threat is Warren. The threat is Warren. I'm sorry. I agree. Bernie does know that he sees Trump as an existential threat, right, and would accept whatever the party does in regarding to the nomination. Unfortunately, Garden, yes, I agree with you. Unfortunately, I agree with you. But I think in this case, he's thinking Warren. She's the only race to split the vote. Thanks for proving my point, Jamal. She's only in the race. Yes, I think she's in the race to split the vote. That's exactly. Look, let's not pretend that party structures don't try to push people into the race for various things. I keep making the point. Tom Perez didn't get into the race on his own end. Tom Perez got into the race because Obama and Clinton was pushing him into the race for the DNC convention. The Democratic Party, the DSCC, and the DCCC has gone out to try to choose who they want in various districts. And in some cases telling people, yeah, sorry, get out the race. Steny Hoyer telling that guy to get out the race. And in the presidency, you have Bloomberg getting to the race because Sanders is doing well, in spite of Warren being in the race, mind you. Look, whether she's in the race for her own power or not, she is splitting the vote in this case. Civil disobedience. Polls show Biden's voters' choices. Bernie, we need to knock out Biden. Well, it depends. I mean, it depends on where you're the poll. Why would she run? She's not there for change. She's an agent to stop Sanders. It's fixed. They tried to get her to run in 2016. She wouldn't run. Sanders creates a space on the left and then runs again in 2020. Warren then runs. Now, why are you in the race? If indeed your campaign is for big structural change, you want to change this and change that, if you're indeed for Medicare for all and all of these policies that Sanders is pushing, then get out the race and support Sanders. Why are you there? Your campaign doesn't make sense from the standpoint of what you're saying your campaign is. That's all. If Sanders created the space, Sanders has a funding mechanism, Sanders has a large base of support, why are you here? Why are you there? Warren's base is more affluent whites. Yes, that is true also. The catch becomes, can she increase her numbers? And that's unclear. And I still say I don't think she can beat Trump. Whatever Sanders' mission is, because again, I'm stuck with this notion of you're a rational human being and you can see that this person is aping you. So either he's doing nothing about it, which I don't believe, or either he is doing something about it. And the question becomes, what is that something that he's doing about it? The only thing I can see is he is running to the left and is putting out policy proposals and is essentially daring her to follow. And maybe he thinks at some point her facade would just kind of break down under the stress of the campaign. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't see her as a threat. I think that is insane at this point. And maybe he thinks Biden is the biggest problem. The catch here is, it is Warren that is gutting you, not Biden. It is Warren that is gutting you. Her aping you is sapping numbers. Like, I know people bring up Tulsi Gabbard and they bring up Yang and all this other stuff. Warren is the person in this race that is pretending to be Sanders. And in pretending to be Sanders, pulling away his numbers. I don't think this is beneficial for Sanders. It hurts him. And by the way, they're not the same quantity. Like, the media in this case doesn't bring up foreign policy. They omit that from the conversation, which is weird since they attacked Sanders for not doing foreign policy in the last election. The fix is in, and she is there to hit him in the knees. And my question boiled down to, what is he doing to deal with that? So, I'll end this. Like, Tulsi said last weekend when asked, was she in the race against Sanders? She said, I got in the race long before he did. To be fair, then why does Turner bring up the differences? It's confusing. Well, Nina Turner does. But if you remember, Nina Turner never mentioned Warren by name. She never mentioned her by name. And think about how often she does that in those speeches. It's always in this kind of diffuse way. Do you think that if Sanders gave the okay for Nina Turner to bring up Warren by name, that she would do it? I guess my point is, it's clear that the head of the campaign, meaning Sanders, doesn't create those distinctions. And when policy differences come up, he may bring it up in those terms, meaning for Medicare for all. But he clearly shows a different tenor towards her, meaning Warren, than he does for anybody else in the race. And he is perfectly open to hitting Biden any day of the week. So, yes, Nina Turner is awesome. Yeah. Turner's awesome, man. But if you look at, I don't like this notion. I think it bugs me, and I think it bugs many Sanders supporters, this notion of people considering these two the same. They do it in the media all the time. If you're talking about MSNBC, MSNBC doesn't even go with this notion of the same. MSNBC goes with this notion that you are sexist for supporting Sanders because these two people are so similar to one another. I mean, this is the nonsense that they put out there in regards to the way they talk about the media. I guess the question becomes, what is the way to deal with Warren? And it's possible that the way he's chosen to deal with her is to just try to be better. And I don't know if that's going to work. I have to be honest, it will be a catastrophe if Warren takes this race, or if Biden takes it because Warren got in it when she didn't need to. So, I'll leave it here. Like, share. Bernie Sanders is the best candidate. Don Evans. Yes, I agree with you that he's the best candidate. But again, there are 20 people who are in this race. Deval Patrick just got in this race. Bloomberg just got in this race. Meaning they're throwing more bodies into the race despite all of these people already being into the race. Warren jumped into the race, and I still don't know why. If Warren is right, meaning her campaign got into this race explicitly for this notion of having big structural change, then why are you actually here? And it seems, especially since she's working behind the scenes with Clinton, and these two have had deals going back to 2013, that she could have been pushed into this race solely to sap the strength from Sanders. I do not take that. I don't take that off the table at all. I don't take that off the table at all. Nicholas Maslow, he won't call her out. No, he don't. And that's my point. In every situation, as this race is pursued, where he had the opportunity to kind of make the point, she's not really grassroots funded. Biden will. Sanders wouldn't. Or, are you really for Medicare for all? Where's your policy plan? Any of that stuff. Like, he doesn't call her out. Why are you taking money in the general but not in the primary? Is it because you're doing this? You weren't out there for Standing Rock in advance. You didn't support me in 2016. He can't say that. You didn't support me in 2016. But he has to know that. And if he knows that, I guess the question becomes, and he says it all the time, Elizabeth Warren and I are good friends. Fair enough, but you're running in a presidential race. And between the two of you, do you honestly believe that you would enact the policies in the way that you would enact, be it domestic policy or foreign policy? And if that answer is no, then you need to do everything in your power to win this contest. Now, assuming for the moment that he knows that, is it possible that in his head, the best way to do this is to drag her out to the left? Be it because I think it will be passable for me, or because I think she can't swim in those waters. I don't know. I don't know. A fair field it is. Bernie can't run third party. He's not going to run third party. If he didn't do it in 2016, he's never going to do it. All right. I end it here. Like, share, subscribe.